Hi, my name is Whitney Beatty, and I am founder and CEO here at Josephine and Billies in beautiful South Los Angeles. We're the first dispensary in the country to focus on women of color. And I'm here today to talk about what made me want to open a retail location. Well, my background in cannabis is kind of different. I didn't grow up smoking cannabis in high school. I didn't really use it in college. I actually ended up coming to it much later in life. I was working in the entertainment industry, and I was putting in these 16-hour days trying to work my way up in that world. And I was sitting at my desk one day and I started feeling heart palpitations, cold sweats, pain in my arm. I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought I was going to die. At the same time, I didn't want to have an ambulance come into the office because I thought that would be embarrassing. So I got up from my desk, grabbed my keys, got in my car, drove myself over to the UCLA Medical Center, and parked my car where the ambulance is parked, because I guess if I'm going to die, I don't care if my car gets towed. And I walked in and said, "Hey, I'm having a heart attack." They rushed me to the back and put me on the EKG machine, and they were like, "Lady, you're not having a heart attack. You're having an anxiety attack." And that changed the game for me in a couple of ways, because I needed to figure out how I was going to be able to deal with that anxiety. And the doctor tried to put me on several different drugs, and I didn't like any of them. And finally, in an offhand comment, she said to me, "Hey, have you ever thought about cannabis?" And I was like, because for me, I grew up in the 80s in Detroit. Nancy Reagan told me to say no to drugs, and I believed her. I didn't know that Nancy was a liar like that. But what she did was she made me think about it enough to do my research. And I did that research on two hands. On one side, I did research trying to understand the plant, how it could help me. And I learned about THC and CBD and the entourage effect, and terpenes. And it was life-changing, and I was able to actually stop taking those medications and move on to a regimen that was all cannabis. But the other side, which was almost as important, was why did I feel so negatively about the plant? And that caused me to dig in and learn about the history of cannabis, how cannabis was a plant medicine for 3,000 years and prohibited for 70 years, how it was prohibited by Harry Anslinger, a man who said reefer makes darkies think they're as good as white men. And once I was able to wrap my head around how we ended up in Prohibition, what I saw in living through the war on drugs and how that affected me, it really changed my view of the plant and that stigma. But it took a lot of work and a lot of research for me to get there. And so when the opportunity came for retail in Los Angeles, I jumped on it because I wanted to be able to build a location where I could give that information out to other women of color in an easy way. What I knew for sure is that women are more stressed than men, and women of color are the most stressed cohort out there. And yet we have the least access to healthcare. And when we do have access to healthcare, the doctors aren't listening to us. And when we can get the doctors to listen to us, a lot of times we don't have the coverage it takes to be able to take those medications. So being able to have healthy, safe access to cannabis within our communities becomes incredibly important. And that was the genesis for Josephine and Billies. Josephine and Billies is named after Josephine Baker and Billie Holiday, two women of color who were persecuted for their cannabis consumption. And yet they used their art to fight against injustice. They rejected the mainstream, and they wrote their own rules, all while holding the door open for other women who would come after. And for us, that is goals AF. I spend my time every other Monday teaching classes within our TPAD on the history of cannabis. It's called Tea and Terps. We serve tea, we have crumpets, and we talk to people so they can understand and destigmatize, learn about the history of the plant, and how to make use of it in their own lives. And that's how I ended up here. So when I first started looking into the cannabis space, the very first event I ever went to in Los Angeles was a Women's Grow event. And it was amazing to be able to go and see a lot of other women in the room, and to be able to hear their experiences and really understand that I had an ability to make it within the space because these other women were doing it. I was able to exchange information, to network, and to really get a grasp of what the California cannabis market was because of those women. So I'm incredibly grateful to this day for Women's Grow for building that community for me to fall into and work my way up in this space.